And so if we can keep that trend going, we can really keep tax rates stable.
Hi everyone, I'm Steve Stoller.
And I'm Shauna Haley, and this is Inside Plano. Well, welcome to another episode of Inside Plano. We're back with you again. And this year we've been talking on the show quite a bit about reinvesting in the community and how Plano's doing that. In fact, I'll get to our guest in just a moment. But he's been on the show already this year as we were talking about economic development and the work that we're doing in our business community. So, redevelopment looks like a lot of different things. It looks like making sure we have a diverse business space, making sure that we have strong and healthy neighborhoods, that we're reinvesting in our infrastructure, in our parks, in our libraries, streets, water lines, all of those things. Today, we want to talk about the latest and greatest tool that is in our toolkit, particularly on the economic development side. It's called a Retail Rehabilitation Program. And anyone who's lived in Plano for some time knows that you can't drive through Plano without encountering retail, and often you're encountering what we call four-corner retail. So retail on all four corners of an intersection. As I mentioned, we have a guest who's been with us already this year. We can tell that we've been doing a lot of economic development work this year. Peter Braster, Director of Special Projects, had a very integral role in developing the particular program we're going to talk about today, the Retail Rehabilitation Program. So welcome back, Peter.
Thank you for having me again.
I'm glad to have you here. We won't go through all of the who you are because people are like, we know Peter.
Yeah, I've been everywhere for a while now.
Exactly. Well, Peter, can you give us an overview? What is the Retail Rehab Program?
Sure. The Retail Rehab Program, it really is about helping businesses and property owners in the retail space redefine their project so that we have more sustainable future for the retail. We happen to be sitting into one of the first sort of pilot projects. This is Greenvine Market here on 18th and K. I think this is the original supermarket in Plano. I'm pretty sure it was a Safeway in 1960, whatever. So it was pretty downtrodden before the current owners have it. And so we help them with facade, making the facade improvements better, doing both sides of the building that face the street, some of the, anyway, just bigger and better. And it worked out really well. I think this is an asset to downtown, an asset to the community as a whole. Greenvine is a halal market, so if you're interested in good quality beef, this would be the place to come. In fact, I know there's a whole series of barbecue pitmasters that get their brisket here.
Oh, wow.
Which is just a factoid that I thought was like you wouldn't think, but because the quality is just so great, they have the purveyors to provide the brisket. So if you need brisket, come to here. Yeah.
If we had smell-o-vision going on as well, I would tell everyone that I am just dying because the smell of cinnamon and sugar and coffee is floating over us. It's intense and
heaven.
Wonderful.
It really is.
Well, what inspired the creation of this program?
It's a conundrum because our economic development grants have always been to headquarters, and this is sort of the old way of doing business. We've always knew we had to do something with retail. So when Doug McDonald really revamped the program for office and industrial and included things like rehabbing the space, it was just the right opportunity to roll this out as for sort of phase 2 of that, or part B of that program. And so we sort of been thinking about it for a very long time, even before Doug came back as Economic Development Director, and it was just the right time to do it. Like I said, this predates that. We did this deal in 2019. This happens to be in the downtown tax increment reinvestment zone, so we had some funds that we could do that kind of grant with, and so it was a real great test market. The success alone, it opened just before COVID, or during COVID, so it had a little struggle in the beginning because of that. But I think anybody who looks at this building or this market knows that it was money well spent. It went from, we have seen already our return on our investment with its property value. So I think everything in all, it was a good test case. It was an important property here in downtown to make that change. And so it's the same thing, is the goal of the program is, does it make the retail better? Does it make it more attractive? Will the neighborhood now be proud of the center? And is it something that will lift the neighborhood as well as the retail center. Because I think at Plano and a lot of places, we use the retail centers as an identifier. We all have our, you live in Plano, you have a neighborhood name, but when you say what part of neighborhood are you, you use the kind of the retail as the anchor. And so that's kind of what the point of this whole is to make those anchors stronger and better for the foreseeable future. We don't have in retail, we do not actually have a vacancy problem. It's only running like 4% or 5%. Wow. So we have a strong retail. We have a lot of it, but it's full. My joke, it's all restaurants, but that's just my joke because I don't think anybody in Plano actually cooks anymore.
Right. Why? Why should you?
I know. It's like there's 5 restaurants on every corner, right? But it's a joke, but it's serious. And so the question is, can we keep that momentum going for the longer term? And that's what this program is to do.
So you talked a little bit about return on investment for the property value. Are there other softer benefits for the local businesses that surround a property that's rehabilitated or for the community itself?
Sure. So if we do a whole center, or in this case, we didn't do a whole center, we just did this building, I think you see the other tenants then enjoy more vibrancy of a center and people will want to go back to it. I think as they get a little downtrodden, do you go just to that one business or do you go to other businesses? If it's your favorite restaurant, say, you might still go there, but you won't think about going anywhere else. And so this program can help, the idea of if we do it like a whole center, you could almost think of it as actually it's new and you would try everything again, even though it's just a lot of good aesthetic improvements. And so it's really about just lifting all the tide, lifting all the boats, right? So can we make and have successful small business here in Plano, retail, restaurant, or whatever. But it's really about doing that and keeping that vibrant and then keeping our neighborhoods who sit right behind these centers vibrant as well.
Gosh, I wish I'd pulled some of the numbers, but maybe you know them, like the balance between small business and mid-sized to big business. We actually have a lot of small business, correct?
We do in all sectors, and I think that, and that's stuff on the economic development web pages. But in retail, if we're only 5% empty, you can tell that we have everything, and everything is doing well. Do all retailers make it? No, but that's the nature of that business, not Plano or anything we're doing. It's just that's the way it works. That being said, we certainly want to help anybody who needs it. I think we have some older shopping centers, things like they weren't required to have fire sprinklers, but now they need them. And so can we backfill a big space by just providing help with running water line from the street to the building and adding a meter? That doesn't cost a whole lot of money, but it is something that helps the value of the building in the long term and get a tenant that would create something new and vibrant.
Absolutely. Not a lot of money on the city side, but really a lot of money on the
Impact.
small businesses' ability to open. So then let's talk about who qualifies for the rehab program.
Sure. We have an application process. Anybody can email me to get that application, but it really is any center that's a little on the older side. We certainly don't need to incentivize new centers, but this is really about existing retail centers on any corner in Plano that needs help revitalizing itself. And really, we're not going to pay for everything. Generally, our rule of thumb is about 10% of the overall investment from the landlord or the building or the tenant, depending on what it is. But certainly things like fire sprinkler, helping with that is a no-brainer. We're really into the aesthetics of it. Can we make the facade better? Not really interested in paying for paint, but can we do more than that, make it even more attractive? Adding green space, you have a cluster of restaurants, do you want a patio space with a little bit of lawn? We can help with that kind of thing as well.
Well, you mentioned we're sitting here in Greenvine, and I'm just thinking there's no way that anyone would have ever thought this was a Safeway or a fill in the blank any other type of grocery store from the 60s. The folks who are watching on video can see this really nice wood wall behind you.
That's
and
right.
We're sitting almost in an enclosed patio.
This
it's
is
fabulous.
actually an old parking space.
That's unbelievable. Unbelievable.
And our investment here helped push the facade out into these parking spaces to give them sort of this idea that you could have some dining and enjoy the coffee and cakes, which you should if you've not been here. And by the way, their lunches are amazing too, so and a good value.
Absolutely.
I think all of the City Hall comes over here.
Oh,
for
yes.
lunch.
We definitely do. It's a nice little walk. So, you mentioned facade improvements and things. Are there other types of renovations that are eligible?
Yeah, there's a whole list of them. I'm going to read them because I'm going to forget
Sure.
some, but we're doing facade improvements, demolition of older parts that need to be rebuilt, landscaping, lighting, signage, paving. If you want to connect to the neighborhood, if that's something the neighborhood wants, better connections for pedestrians so you don't have to get in your car and drive around the corner. Things like location, is there a use, say, in a shopping center that's going to change the paradigm for the shopping center. One, we didn't incentivize it at all, but one recently happened with Pickleball Kingdom, where I think it's going to be a game changer for the whole center. They didn't ask for our help, so we didn't give it to them, but at the same time, it's a good example of attracting a use into a bigger box like a supermarket, and how do we help that center excel. There's another example, again, we didn't help them, but they subdivided the box. If you remember where Kroger was on Park and Preston, that box was divided. Two big major retailers went in, so they didn't necessarily need our help, but that kind of subdivision or demolition of a big box would be something we would help with, if that was what the landlord and then future uses wanted.
So you mentioned a little bit on allocation of funding, that it's kind of like capped at 10%. Through the application process, are you looking at their overall financials? I'm thinking back like kind of through the Great Update rebate, like of the things that we look at when it's a residential project. Is similar for this?
It's similar. It's not as maybe, I think our big grants for businesses are a little more distinctive when it comes to that. On this particular case, because it's improvements to the building, the value is already almost guaranteed to be added because they're making improvements. So we're not as concerned about the long-term viability, say, of a tenant, as opposed to and we pay only after the improvement is done. So did they do it? Yes. Okay, we'll pay for it. In that case, we're really looking about adding value to the property itself. So concern over tenants' financials isn't necessarily in the forefront, which actually is really helpful for small business, because some small businesses don't have any track record, and they may be the best new thing ever. And so if you hold them to that standard, it's not going to help them or the center. So that's why we do property investments as opposed to attraction to a tenant.
Gotcha. So retail, like we have a lot of things that we could focus on, and you mentioned, this felt like the logical next step, but why retail? Is it because we have so much that it became such an issue?
Right. I mean, if you look at Plano on a map, and you look where the retail centers are on every corner of every major boulevard, we do have a lot of it. I think we've long said we have too much, but my point is, as of today, with 5% vacancy, I don't know that that's true. Do we want to keep what we have? I don't think it's up to government to decide you don't get to exist anymore, but I think if they want to invest in their properties and keep it for the long term, we're here to help them do that.
So you mentioned, two good examples that didn't necessarily use the rehab program. This is, I guess, the best case of one that if the program itself had been called that at that time. What do you think the long-term, looking at just 3 projects that have happened, what do you think the longer-term economic development impact is going to be on Plano as more of these centers take advantage of this?
I mean, the biggest one, of course, isn't really about this at all, but you talk about Collin Creek Mall, which is a big retail center that got help from the city to revitalize itself or reimagine itself. Then that's a great example. It was retail rehab, period. Right? I mean, it's bigger than this program. Right. There was also one that didn't qualify for this because it was before it, but Assembly Park certainly is a retail center that got city help. through a bond referendum that we had for revitalization. So it was outside of the program, but still would have qualified. And it converted that old mall into retail apartments and multifamily and office. That is
It's
amazing.
gorgeous. It's gorgeous.
And so that, could you say that I think it was $2 million, helped them do all that? Yes. It was in the middle of COVID, and everything was getting expensive, and we now have something that was pretty much worthless into something that is spectacular. So if we can continue those kind of things, then I think we're doing a great service to the citizens of Plano.
So property owner is interested in potentially being considered. How do they start the process?
They just call me, and we
Yeah.
start talking to them,
Yeah.
and we go over their plans and see how we can help. It's very one-on-one in the sense of, I can't give you, there is no magic formula, but there is certainly some guidelines that are in our policy, and we'll stick to those, but every case will be different, and it'll be up to City Council to decide how much and if at all.
So, like taking it down to even more micro level, lots of tenants in a center. What if a business owner is interested in this, but they're not the property owner? How does that work?
That's going to be an interesting case. It hasn't happened yet. Although here, the business owner applied for it and got the grant for this space.
But this is a large space.
This is a very large space, and it is in a center, but most centers have individual lots. This happens to be one lot within a center, so it gets all complicated, but that's the
Gotcha.
retail business. In this case, to answer your question, call me and to see if we can help them. I think it would be, if it's a singular business in a small space, it would have to be sort of a game changer on the center. If it's going to be elevating the center and its selections, then yeah, maybe it would be, more than likely we would try to help somewhat.
Tell me how you're going to manage or monitor, I guess, success. What does success look like
that's easy.
overall?
Collin County CAD lists the value of the property, and and they're going to go up, obviously, but are they going to go up more because it's improved? The answer is yes. I mean, you can look at the history of this place. I think this building was worth, when we started, $22,000. I mean, it was like, basically, it was worthless. And now you can say that it's worth a lot. While we get our commercial property values up, that alleviates the residential property burden. And we've been long-term successful on that. When we switched over from now, I think we're 50-50 commercial retail, commercial versus residential. And so if we can keep that trend going, we can really keep tax rates stable. And that's what we've been doing.
Plus, I think everybody likes to shop in the newest and the nicest. I mean, that's just how we are as humans, and so it feels very fresh. Certainly, it feels good in this space. It feels
Doesn't
good
it?
to come in. So
I mean, you're sitting on a parking spot, so yeah.
it doesn't feel like that. I don't even see any lines painted. So we've mentioned it before. We'll mention it again. The best way to get started with the process is an email.
Yeah,
An email.
peterb@plano.gov.
Okay.
I think I might have the easiest email.
I think you probably do. Although mine is just my first name, so it's also pretty easy, but my name is not easy to spell.
There you go. I have to think about it.
Exactly. Well, is there anything else that you would want our taxpayers to know, our residents to know about how this program works and why it matters?
Yeah, I think, well, why it matters is, again, to keep the retail sector stable and successful, because that helps everyone. Also, we're increasing the property values of the retail centers, helps residential because we don't have to necessarily increase the rate. We do not need to get into the rate versus value discussion.
Right.
But, and I think it's really the overall health of the community. It is also one of the more visible things in Plano. As we drive down the boulevards, we see the retail centers. We might not see that new office building, but we'll certainly see the retail centers. And I think it's just part and parcel of our whole ethos here at Plano, the City of Excellence, about being proactive before things actually get out of hand. And so that's what this program really is being proactive out ahead of absolute need. We're just doing it now so that we never have to get to that point.
Absolutely. And it's kind of interesting, even though we don't own these properties, they are an asset to the
Absolutely.
community. So in a way, it's maintaining our assets and
Exactly.
feeling good about it. Obviously, I'm a big fan of Greenvine. I do come here and shop because it's so close to the office, and so money well spent in this space. It's
Yes,
beautiful and
yes.
crowded behind us. Here we are in the middle of the day, and people are coming in for lunch. So thank you for your work, Peter, and thank you for putting this
thank
together.
you.
And of course, we should thank City Council for really seeing the value in this type of program and investing back into our community in meaningful ways.
Oh, absolutely.
All right. Well, we will put links in the show notes to all of these things. Our local business owners, we encourage you. When we give you an email, please do reach out. These programs are here, and we would love for you to apply for consideration if you think you have a good project that fits. That's what it's here for.
That's right.
We don't want to just have it on the shelf. We want to have it used. So thank you for joining us on the show. Thank you all for listening. We will be back next month with another show, and our erstwhile co-host Steve Stoller will be back as well. He's out today. You know what to do if you have questions, comments, feedback. You can send them to us at askplano@plano.gov. And until then, we'll talk to you next month.
And that's it for our Inside Plano. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did doing it.
If you have any comments or suggestions, send them to us at askplano@plano.gov. Bye.
Talk to you next month. The Inside Plano podcast is brought to you by the City of Plano.